What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Carla Vernon. In 2021, Carla was hired as the Vice President of Amazon Consumables, a $56 billion portfolio, including grocery, household products, and beauty, and also was appointed to the Board of Trustees at her alma mater, Princeton University. Previously, as president of General Mills Natural and Organic, she was responsible for brands across 20 food categories. She drove unprecedented growth of her snack portfolio, including Annie's, Larabar, and Nature Valley. In fact, she restored growth to Nature Valley, resulting in the highest level of unit sales in the brand's history, making it the world's top-selling granola bar. Today's episode is a little longer than average, and I'm confident you will love every minute. You might even feel like you are best friends with Carla after this authentic conversation.
If you're on a team, you should be able to express the shared goal, the shared vision, and the key pillars that have been agreed on to go chase after that goal. In business, we call that objectives, strategies, and goals. And you should have had the opportunity to be part of crafting them so that you also believe them, you hold them, you manifest them yourself. You own the desire to get there.
Carla, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's so great to be with you.
Well, it's so much fun to be able to introduce you into this program because when I first reached out to you as a friend, my question to you was, hey, did you play athletics? Because I've known you so well as a CEO and executive and a powerhouse, but I didn't know whether you had much of an athletic background. And you said, I wasn't just an athlete, I was a dancer.
Yes.
And I thought, my gosh, I wouldn't have necessarily finished the sentence that way, but you did, and you did it so forcefully that by the time you explained what it took to be a dancer to me, something I'm not fully aware of, I was convinced you were the perfect guest for this audience. And so I want to get this out of the way right at the beginning.
Okay.
Tell us what the athletic requirements are to be a great dancer, because I want anybody that's listening to understand what you had to put into your regimen to be great.
I think that a lot of people in both the fitness world and even the health and physiology world have described both dance and swimming as some of the most all-around cross-training forms of fitness. I am not a good swimmer, so I will stay tuned to this podcast for a swimmer to see if they back me up on that. But dance, to be excellent at it, it requires all the muscles from all the zones that you have, be strong. Even something as simple that may go as unnoticed as your arm strength in dance is critical. Because if you ever think about have you ever done even just one of those aerobic workouts or something? Remember, you and I go both,
Sure.
We can go both date ourselves back to the aerobics era,
where
the instructor asks you to keep your arms maybe moving or doing that bicep flex thing the whole time while your feet are doing something else. And it's not your legs and feet that want to give up first. It's your arms that want to give up. You
Right.
want to hate that teacher because you feel that arm burn. Well, if you think about watching a great dance performance, what you will notice is that their arms are active and up the whole time. So it's been trained, stem to stern in a dancer. And then one of the other most, I think, the more recently appreciated components of being fit is the core and the attention to the core and how everything radiates from a healthy core. And dancing is so much about balance that the core is just mission critical.
Well, and the more I listened to you and then read and looked, the more I realized how many other athletes, like great football players and others, who were coming to train using dance as a training method. And I thought, wow, man, boy, have I completely undersold or missed this idea over the years.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, once you get into it and you look it up on the internet, you find out that, well, it should be intuitive that all the people we think of as the world's best gymnasts and the world's best ice skaters, it's not a stretch to imagine that dance was a key component of their cross training because grace is important, whether you're male or you're female. But what people overlook is that, yeah, you're right. I mean, Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George is
Hmm.
famous for talking
Hmm.
about how difficult dance is, how important it was in helping him improve his footwork and his flexibility. Some people don't know that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Herschel Walker were big dancers. So it really does translate across fields because it's a strength training. You're using your own body weight as the workout, and it gives you real presence and poise and presence of mind. So thank you for saying that.
As a legitimate dancer, you may roll your eyes at this, but a couple of years ago, I had written a book with a guy who was a catcher for the Chicago Cubs, the World Series team that won he was the backup catcher, David Ross, and a great guy. I mean, he's currently the manager of the Cubs, but David was invited after retiring from the Cubs to be on that Dancing with the Stars show.
Okay.
We, as a family, started watching every week. And David lost 15 pounds.
Wow.
Now, he had just finished a 15-year career as a major league athlete, right?
Wow.
And in the 11 weeks he was on Dancing with the Stars, he lost 15 pounds because the regimen of dancing all the time was so demanding. He said, gosh, like I've never been in better shape. And I thought, there's all I need to know right now.
Yeah. I think some of the athletes also say that it covers some muscles that they miss
They didn't
in their
know. Right.
normal workout. And then that just makes them a more fierce competitor because they've got that many more go-to resources physically to kind of outwit
Strength.
and outmaneuver. So, yeah.
That's it.
Mm.
So I know you studied at the American Academy of Ballet in Buffalo, and you danced at Princeton. Pretty cool. In fact, I'm excited about asking you more about Princeton. But take me back to when you first started dancing. A lot of little girls start young in ballet. My daughter did it for a couple of years. And what do you remember about those early days, those first dance classes?
Well, I remember the very beginning. My dance career actually started as a gymnastics career.
Oh,
So, well, it even predated that. And I am going to date myself, but I'm really proud for every year I've got on this planet. So there's no shame in
yeah.
my game. My mom used to do the TV Jack LaLanne workout that you could do that was in the 70s and would come on TV and you'd pull one of your kitchen chairs and you'd stand in some room and kick your legs up, do the scissor kicks or whatever, Jack LaLanne.
Right.
And so I would be just a little toddler behind her just, on my little chair doing my workout. And eventually I told my mom that I wanted to take gymnastics. I must have seen some gymnasts on TV. I don't know if it was Olympic year or what was going on. So they found a little gymnastics studio and took me as a 3-year-old to gymnastics. And about 6 months into doing, whatever 3-year-old, we've all taken our 3-year-olds to 3-year-old gymnastics. We know it's not the most, there's a lot of
Right.
hopping on inflatable,
Right.
mattresses and stuff. And, the gymnastics teacher noticed that I seemed to be particularly graceful and gifted. And so she was the one who said to my parents, there's a ballet studio in our community that is known to be the best ballet studio in the area. I really recommend you take your daughter there. So my dad called up the dance studio and asked the founder and owner, Maris Battaglia, and Miss Maris, because in dance we call all our teachers Miss, Mr., Miss, Mrs. So Miss Maris said I could come by for the littlest level of class, but I was actually younger than what the typical starting student back then. You wouldn't take a kid into ballet until they were about 4 or 5, really, because they don't have the attention span.
Right.
But I started at 3.5, and I remember that first dance class, unfortunately, because I remember that when Miss Maris was trying to help correct my turnout, I was so nervous and so rigid that she couldn't move my feet, and she broke her nail. And I was horrified as a 3-year-old. And when you asked me for this memory, I was like, I still remember feeling so tragic, brokenhearted, and embarrassed to have injured my own dance teacher in my first class.
Broken fingernail, straight up. That's right. I'm sure there were a lot of other injuries over the course
Yeah,
of
I
time.
don't think that was her worst one. It's just the most scarring for me.
That's right. It's stuck with you. You had a unique experiences. I've read and learned more about you of having the famous American ballet dancer Arthur Mitchell as your first ballet partner, right?
Yes.
And not only was he the first African American dancer with the New York City Ballet, but he also founded his own company. And so, what was it like, and what did you learn having that kind of close interaction to greatness, to legitimate best in class?
I am so honored to be able to talk about Arthur Mitchell because at this point in history, I don't think his moment has come yet to be singled out and to be sung as such a hero in American culture. You pointed out that Arthur Mitchell was the first Black dancer to integrate the classical ballet culture through the New York City Ballet, which was the absolute most renowned and most exclusive dance company in the United States. His integration of the New York City Ballet would be on par with the way people talk about Jackie Robinson
Wow.
being the first major league Black baseball player. So if you say Arthur Mitchell is Jackie Robinson to classical dance, that's what we're talking about. How would you feel to take your first lesson from Jackie Robinson? And my son is I have a 15-year-old son, and he loves sports movies, and he loves breaking the color barrier type sports movies, which is a whole genre of movie in and of itself.
Right. Sure.
I look at those movies, and those movies celebrate the same thing that Arthur Mitchell did for us in dance. And yet someone hasn't picked up on telling his story. His
Mm.
story didn't end, though, with him integrating the classical world of New York City Ballet. He then went on, because he did that in the 1960s. But then
Wow.
he went on to realize in the early 70s that it wasn't enough for him to be the only Black dancer to be able to be successful. So he created a dance company that's still going on today, and it's called the Dance Theater of Harlem. And its focus was actually classical ballet. But its mindset was, this will be a home for brown dancers with brown skin. Because what some people don't realize, Don, is that there are many subtle aspects to dance that are very culturally biased. Something as simple as the fact that ballet dancers as a standard wear peach and pink tights and peach and pink
Right.
ballet slippers. The idea there is to make your body look infinitely longer because they should match the color of your arms and so you just look long. Well, that's not true. If your skin is brown, you look real weird. So Arthur Mitchell wanted to create a home where brown dancers could look in the room and see other people as beautiful and talented as themselves, and the ways in which our bodies are different. So when I was just a little tiny bunhead, maybe I was 8 or 9 years old, and I was in a summer seminar that Arthur Mitchell had come to Buffalo, New York, and he was going to run a 3-week seminar. You could only participate if the ballet studio owner and founder, Miss Maris, invited you to be in Arthur Mitchell's class. And then
Wow.
you would get 3 weeks of summer training with Mr. Mitchell. And at the time, I was the only brown dancer in my class. And there came a time when you do your warm-ups on that ballet bar. Everyone has seen the ballet bar warm-up. It's very flexibility oriented, but also a very lower body strength workout. Then you come into what we call the center of the floor for the second half of your dance class. And that's when you're really doing the all over body workout. So we were lined up in rows facing the mirror, and I was somewhere in the second or third row. And Mr. Mitchell said he was going to teach us how to do what's called partnering, which is when you usually see a man and a woman, and the man's doing all the lifting and the woman is doing all the elegant stretching. To be able to be invited to be partnering is another milestone in your dance career, just like getting permission to use your first point shoes. And it's a sign that you've learned enough of the fundamentals. So to have your first partnering class, basically from Jackie Robinson, is already
Oh my
incredible.
gosh.
But then when he singled out the one person he wanted to use to demonstrate the exercises, and he picked little 9-year-old Carla, I mean, I feel like the goosebumps are on my skin right now telling this story.
I've got them right now too.
And I know it can't have been a mistake for a man who had so intentionally been trying to make Black dancers feel that we belonged and we were beautiful, that he would give me that wonderful privilege.
Wow.
Couldn't be more elegant and debonair. Okay, Jackie Robinson combined with Denzel Washington. Put it in your mind.
Oh man. From that experience, were you able to stay in touch at all?
Oh, I have so many stories of amazing people that I wish I'd stayed in touch with. I didn't. He was, like a famous person, and I was a little girl. That's not the last time I learned that lesson. Sometime you'll ask me about the fact that I didn't stay in touch with Michelle Obama, who was also my mentor. But, if I could fill my penny jar with all of these regrets.
Right. Yeah. We wouldn't need another jar, right? We'd be great.
We'd be somewhere gliding on a different kind of dance floor right now.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's the thing about early interaction with exceptionalism as you had it there. There's a lot to be learned, but often it's not learned until you're 20 years later.
May I say that? I love that. I'm going to double down on that. That also people who are that thoughtful and excellent at what they do, people who have achieved a personal best through their own discipline and their own character, sometimes you don't even need much. I mean, they just touch you a little bit with that paintbrush and you are changed.
Right. Completely. That's awesome that you had that experience. You mentioned warm up in that answer, and you wrote a blog on the art of warm up in sports and arts and business, and talking about how you use that concept with your teams at General Mills and kind of teaching them a little about implementing a warm up. Was wondering if you could share a little of your concepts there, because
Yes.
I was so taken by it. Like I actually started figuring out how could I implement some of those words even with my own team.
Yeah. Well, I am fascinated by the model of high performance teams. I know you are. You are basically a subject matter expert on what are the factors that drive high performance teams. And I was reflecting in my role as the leader, the head of the Annie's business and the organic and natural portfolio for General Mills, about what happens to a team when they go away for that long winter break. And in some
Mm.
industries, maybe everybody doesn't all take their break at the same time. But in the consumer products industry, we were lucky enough that things really used to slow down in about that December, January time period. And so there'd be
Mhm.
a lot of simultaneous slowing down and taking a break. But then when we come back in the new calendar year, it was time to hit on all cylinders.
Mhm.
And one of the things I wanted to help the team do was get into a mindset where we could be both united and synchronized in our plan for that calendar year, the vision we would articulate and we would get to together as a team. But I also wanted to remember the human side of people. And so one of the things about when you're doing warm-ups with the team, I mean, I think about my teenage kids when they're on the field doing their pre-soccer warm-ups or their pre-basketball warm-ups, everybody's not good at the same thing. And this is one of the ideas that as a team. So somebody's warming up and they're more flexible in that part of their body, or somebody's warming up their shots and they're really better from that side of the court. One of the concepts in the warm-up that I also talked about was having individuals share with the team what is on their mind, what concerns are they going into the new year thinking about individually, and where could they use the team's help. If we were aware of what they were working on or what they were striving for, then as a team, because at this point, the team is invested in each other. We have adopted ourselves to each other. And a team has an inclination to want to help once that trust has been really established, help each other even on an individual basis. But as my mom always told me in marriage, nobody can read your mind, Carla. You have to ask for what you want.
Right.
So I try to create an opportunity for people to reflect first on what they're working on and then find a way to communicate that outward.
Because you're right. I mean, if you want them to be able to get and take full advantage of the opportunity created as a team, it requires the importance of expression and understanding. So, yeah, I love it. And I love that you could reflect it back to this idea that you can't actually attack until you've warmed up, right? Nobody jumps off the bench or comes out of the stands to play in the Super Bowl,
You'll hurt
right?
yourself.
Right.
You'll hurt yourself.
Exactly.
I'm a little worried these days with youth athletics that I don't see as much emphasis on warm up and stretching as the body needs. Coming out of the dance discipline, warming up is not only an actual foundational piece of what we do in the practice of the sport, but it also is a lifelong gift.
Right.
Once you know how to keep yourself stretched and flexible, that is a mindset that you then can own as an individual forevermore. So same with a team. I don't want you hurting yourself in January, first meeting back. We're not on the same mindset as each other. Let's
Right.
take some time to gel. Let's give ourselves a moment to check back in on where you are as an individual, and then we can get out there together.
I love it. And then you get to eat some Annie's at the same time. That's awesome.
I don't want to tell you. The best time of year, there's two great times of year if you're on the Annie's business. Of course, National Macaroni and Cheese Day is a national holiday. Everyone should celebrate.
Right.
The other one is the holiday cookie baking party, because if you work in a food business, you work with people who are professional food scientists and food chefs, and nobody makes a better holiday cookie.
That's funny. There we go. I'm filing that away. I will start adding that to my calendar.
Yeah. Check out the Instagram page as the holidays start rolling in. You will see a lot of cute bunny cookies.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Zaeva Cohen founded the dance program at Princeton, and she directed there for more than 40 years. I was amazed when I read so much more about her. But she was also there during your time. Now, what did she teach you that still sticks with you today?
My dance encyclopedia expanded when I left my high school stage and went to Princeton and started becoming a member of the dance program there. It's an extracurricular. You can't get a dance major at Princeton. And I started taking classes in a more broad set of offerings. So I grew up very classical. We could take ballet, you could take a little bit of traditional jazz. And so modern dance was truly new to me when I went to Princeton, but it was a place where Zaeva had made a legendary mark in the dance field, and she was an immigrant to the United States. So she also brought a real cultural background with her. Couple of things that I learned from Zaeva. Ballet is very much about precision, perfection, and meeting an aesthetic ideal that is established and set. Modern is much more about an abstraction and an ability to communicate a concept and bring the audience in to that abstract concept, and then let the audience, in a sense, project their own experiences or their own whatever they're sitting with that day into the dance you're seeing. So Zaeva taught us more about using our imagination, and that what needed to come out of us was not only hitting a really standard set of ideals, but an ability to bring an audience with you in to the art piece, even though they were the audience. So that was the first thing. The other thing that college I'm sure college professors of every sort have to deal with, but a college dance professor has to deal with, is that they could get anybody from any walk of life coming into that studio. So they could get the guy who thinks that this is the underwater basket weaving way to get a credit and just finish that thing out. And they can get the, lifelong ballet bunheads like some of us were. And they have to kind of put all that together. And so what she taught me
Right.
was a love for everyone in the room where they were at, and that she was going to help you travel to what could be your new personal best and learn a new way to stretch and expand what you are used to doing, a new way to stretch and expand what you've come to believe are your limits, but to make that your individual journey, and that there's no best, but as an ensemble, everybody has a role to play.
And as a leader, you might be looking at 20 completely different bests, right?
Totally.
Wow. And that
Totally.
would have to translate completely into your work as an executive.
It's one of the mantras or ethoses that was really always important to me as a leader. As an Afro-Latina making my way up through corporate America, I was never the standard cookie cutter imprint of the leader that we were told to look for in corporate America. There's an exercise that I saw published in the New York Times maybe 3 years ago. And it was like a psychology exercise they conducted on people of all ages and backgrounds and stages. And they said, close your eyes, imagine a leader. Now we're going to give you this pile of crayons. We're going to ask you to draw. Or close your eyes, think of a boss, and we're going to ask you to draw. And so it just told us how much we've imprinted on people in the culture about what we think the image of a leader or a boss or the person in command looks like. So I was already used to being a break from the prototype. So as a leader, one of the things that I always emphasized with the people who work for me is, I don't want you to be the best version of me. You will deliver your best to us as an organization and a team when you deliver the absolute best version of you, and when you take your unique gifts and you apply them to the moment we're in. Because there are no better people to be on this team than who is on this team right now. But we need you to bring your thing.
Wow. Love it. The other thing I've loved, and, from years of knowing you, was when you talk about your mother and her impact on you. Now, for those who are listening who do not know, your mother was one of those NASA hidden figures, and you describe her as a brave trailblazer. And today I know competition is still a part of her daily life. She's an award-winning senior swimmer. She got the swimmer gene. You didn't. But the two of you obviously love competition. How has the idea of competing in your own space brought the two of you even closer together?
Yes. Well, I come from a family of competitors. The first field that my parents both competed on with excellence was the field of academia, of course. My mom was actually late to her athletics. I think if you would have asked my mom about her personal identity as a young woman growing up or as an adolescent, she would always describe herself as, well, I was the nerdy one. I was the skinny one. I wasn't the one that got a spotlight. So it was actually so incredible, the fact that in her 60s, my mom just decided she wanted to keep fit. I remember I gave you the vision of my mom used to work out to the Jack LaLanne television workouts in the 70s with our little
With the chair.
dining room chair and the scissor kicks.
There you go.
So she always had a thread in her whole life of wanting to stay fit mind and fit body. So as she got into her senior years in her 60s, if I can call it the closer I get to it, I don't like the sound of it.
No, they're no senior anymore.
I don't like the sound of it.
Exactly, I'm with you.
She decided that she wanted to take advantage of the workouts at her senior center, and there was a swimming pool. And we know that swimming, one of the things is not only is it a well-rounded all-over workout, but it's really low impact. So it's a nice exercise for you to do as an older person. She went and started taking those swim lessons. And much like the story of the gymnastics teacher who at age of 3 said, wow, you seem to be a natural, you should take ballet. My mom's swim teacher at the senior center said to my mom, you're a natural born swimmer. which is the last thing she would have ever thought. So because she's a lifelong learner and she and I share this mindset that we are our own competition, she held herself to a new goal of, well, how good can I become? What's my own personal best as a woman in my 60s with this swimming thing? And next thing I know, she wasn't living in the same town as me at that time. Next thing I know, she's calling me from Memphis, Tennessee, telling me that she's competing in some senior Olympic swimming games for tennis, the region in Tennessee. And last I knew, she didn't even know how to swim. But this is the story of my mother with all of her talents that stay hidden until she goes for it. And then there's no stopping her, which I love as a lesson because we want to look at all these icons, of sports, and you will have so many of them on this show. But, Nike always had that mantra that the champion is each one of us. And I'm just telling you, it is so true. The thing we all need to remember is we are the only thing holding us back. And we are the most important competition we can compete against. And that's really what my mom has always taught me. I'm still not a great swimmer, but I am used to my mom being better than me at a lot of things like physics.
Well, she was putting people in space. It's all good.
Right. That's reasonable.
We want her to be really good at physics.
That's right. But can she make a marshmallow cereal? I don't know. But probably if she put her mind to it.
Or could she make Annie's sing? So
that's right.
Your father was also accomplished, right? He was a sprinter, one of the top sprinters in Panama.
Yes.
And he continued competing, and then and you and he actually been to the track a few times together. And the two of you even had some fun time. What's that like? I mean, gosh, what an amazing family experience.
When I walk into a track and field setting, I feel like I'm at my second home. You have some of those things in life based on whatever were the places that you always were as a kid. I mean, it could be that you feel at home on a pasture with animals. It could be that you feel at home in a kitchen that smells like something. For me, I feel at home on a track and field course because from, I think, the age of, 3 or 4, we were probably packing brown bag lunches, Ziploc bags full of orange slices, and heading out to the track to watch my dad and the little neighborhood track and field team that he put together. So my dad would tell me stories and experiences of him being a youth athlete in Panama. I remember one of the lessons that is so important to me today that my father would tell me was all about, and when you fail or when you miss the mark or when you make a mistake in the moment, which can sometimes happen when you're performing a whole dance piece, 1, don't let your mistakes show. 2, don't overcorrect. He would always tell me that. He would say he learned it in sports. Whatever was what you were training, whatever was the practice that you'd established for yourself, don't start doubting it under pressure and start changing up that strategy. You know what works for you. Just because you missed it one time, get back in the zone and do what you know works for you.
Because what you often see is in the overcorrection, you turn one mistake into 2.
That's right.
And 2 into 4. And
Right.
pretty soon you have zero confidence and no mental.
It's a mindset.
You're out.
You've gotten out of the zone.
Yeah.
And remember, your competition is you.
That's right.
So you got to stay in the zone.
I love it. You know that our premise of this podcast is that, according to the research, a disproportionate number of executives were actively engaged as you were in sports, and that experience helped the way they shape their leadership styles today. Do you agree with the premise?
I'm certain that many of the athletes that you will speak with and that you've talked to have said the way in which the sports aspects or attributes form them as a leader. There is no doubt in my mind that the things that you learn in training to be an excellent dancer and performer are phenomenal tools to prepare a person to be a team leader and to prepare a person to have individual excellence. For me, some of the things that continue to translate from my dance experience are things like presentation skills. Dance and performance is a two-way sport. You're not successful unless you're effective in your audience enjoying the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we get taught, in addition to just how to be excellent physically at the actual activity, we spend a lot of time talking about how to make sure an audience is engaged with you while you're performing for them. Things like keep your eye on the farthest people back. One of the things you hear is that phrase, don't forget the people in the cheap seats. That phrase comes from the idea that in theater, for sure, there was a time, well, there still is, where the least expensive seats are the farthest back from the stage. People who might have the most difficult time seeing what the performer on stage is doing. And yet, those are probably the most passionate people about seeing that performance because they took what little resources they had and they spent it to be in that seat. So those people are just as important as the people in the front row. Well, learning how to connect with people in all parts of a room really affects me, not only on a regular kind of presentation on the stage, because Don, you're one of the best of the best. I've been in audiences where you've told the Michael Jordan story. I could hear it again and again.
And I could tell it over and over.
But even in this new environment we're in, a Zoom environment, right? A virtual environment, a Google Meet, Teams, whatever people are using, one of the things I'm very aware of because I was a performer is that where I put my eyes based on where my camera is really gives you the feeling of whether I'm looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes because of technology, unfortunately, when I look at you, that might be the wrong optical effect for the digital space. But as a dancer, I was trained to know that it's much more important to make you feel seen. And so I have to work hard and use energy to make sure, even though we're on this screen, I want you to feel connected with me.
Mm.
That's one of many things. Another thing performers and dancers learn, especially performers who perform as part of a whole cadre of other dancers. We call that the core. When we talk about ballet, you know, that stage that might be full of 12 or 20 ballerinas all doing the same thing in unison. But if you think of your favorite music video, it's also the people, the backup dancers lined up behind the celebrity star doing something in unison. Or if you go to a music concert, the same thing is happening. You know, Beyonce's out front, but boy, part of the reason Beyonce looks so phenomenal is what's going on behind her is a united front. And that united front we learn about because being in the core, you have to be excellent in the core before anyone ever gives you an opportunity to be a soloist in dance.
Yeah, up front.
And being excellent in the core means learning the humility of being united with your team, that it's more important to have one excellent shared vision than for you to be an individual superstar.
Mm-hmm.
And even as a leader, it is so important. I remember when I would be guiding my leadership teams, not just on Annie's, but on so many businesses. Hey, when we are in front of the employees we serve, but we're together as maybe the senior leadership team, right? Maybe the 10 people who report directly to me. We need to express our messages to the people who are looking to us for leadership as if we are lockstep. I always told my teams that my ideal vision of a leader is actually Janet Jackson. I know people want to talk about Fred Astaire, people want to talk about Beyonce. I'm convinced that there has never been a better team leader than Janet Jackson in the world of dance.
Wow.
She's an amazing superstar,
Yeah.
but she practices just as rigorously as her team. She puts a spotlight on her team. If you follow Janet Jackson's Instagram feed right now, you'll be so inspired. People around the globe send her versions of them, little kids, people from different countries, skateboarders. I mean, it could be anything. Versions of them performing in their interpretation of maybe to her music, but maybe to something else. And you've never seen someone with so much joy putting the spotlight on others.
Wow.
But Janet was also very disciplined. This performance isn't ready for the audience until we move as one. And if you watch the Rhythm Nation video, and I know I'm dating myself, but to this day, dancers everywhere, one of the biggest goals for themselves is if they can teach themselves to do the Rhythm Nation video, because it's among the most difficult performances. It's fast, it's crisp, and you have to do it in lockstep as a team.
I'm going to be clicking on that before the hour is out.
It's such a positive message for now, too, so it can't hurt.
So you've used the word team, and this leads to a really great little bit of a pivot in a discussion here. You've not just been part of the core, right? Then you've been part of teams corporately. But one of the things that has intrigued me, especially of late, is the number of people who talk about, how we want to hold our team together in the pandemic. But the truth is they don't really have a team. What they have is a collection of people with the same business card, right? They're not moving in lockstep. So as a leader, as someone who has led teams, has been part of that core, how would you define the difference between a team and a group of people who just happen to be drawing the same paycheck?
If you're on a team, you should be able to express the shared goal, the shared vision, and the key pillars that have been agreed on to go chase after that goal. In business, we call that objectives, strategies, and goals. And you should have had the opportunity to be part of crafting them so that you also believe them, you hold them, you manifest them yourself. You own the desire to get there. A lot of people can pick up a paycheck and say, I'm going to do what I'm told to do, but I'm not invested wholeheartedly in the success, or more importantly, in the moments of failure, restoring us back to success again. And I think it's that internalization and a shared agreement to a united goal that is what makes you a member of a team.
Hmm. Do you consider dance an individual or a team sport?
Dance is the world's most fun team sport.
Awesome.
Sorry, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, ping pong people. I'm sorry. But you don't have music.
It's true. They do, but it's played in the stands and they're not really supposed to react to it, right? What were some of the great team building skills you learned in dance? And are there some ways that you applied a couple of those skills? Or maybe is there a story you might tell me as a place in your corporate career where you applied a skill around team building that you saw in dance?
One of the things that can really make people throw themselves so passionately into getting somewhere together as a team is the ability to collectively build the goals and the strategies and the vision of where you want to go as a team.
Mhm.
So, as a dancer, we practice and we study and we choreograph. All of it is in service eventually to a performance. But anytime you've gone to a dance performance, there hasn't only been one number. Even when you went to your daughter's little recitals, there are a lot of numbers. So there is a component of putting together both your individual capability to perform, then to focus on the aspect of the performance that you will own. But the performance is more than just your own dance. It's all of the numbers. We call them the numbers, right? It's all the numbers from the opening number to just before intermission to who opens up post intermission with the curtain. That is actually so similar to the strategy setting cycle of a company,
Mm-hmm.
because when I was running businesses like Nature Valley, I was also running at the same time the Larabar brand and the Fiber One brand. I was running an entire portfolio of snack bars. And there was a leader on each individual snack bar business. The Larabar team leader had to understand what she wanted to do to grow Larabar the most that year, and the same with all the other businesses. That's sort of like knowing your own dance number. But together, when we set our growth goal as an entire portfolio and we all agree to sign on for that year's performance, and even in business, we call that the business performance.
Right.
We're all signing up that together, the strength of the team will only be based on how well we get there together. And some people will get off their plan and some people will get on their plan and need to exceed or need to overcompensate for something going awry in the year. And I can think of times when I would take my teams and do a maybe start of the fiscal year offsite and make certain to craft thoughtfully the activities we would do together so that everyone was heard, so that everyone's fears and concerns could be put on the table, so that we could also sometimes hear from an outside expert, right? as Arthur Mitchell came in and taught us seminars in ballet, so
Right.
might we have the head of supply chain for our company come and talk to our team about what are the supply chain trends that are going to be affecting a business like a natural and organic business? What are the technology changes that the company will be investing in that we might want to think about hitching our wagon to so that we have more momentum? And bringing those experts together and letting us all get messy a little bit in the creation of that strategy, so that when it came time to present our annual plan up the chain to the big people in the big chairs like the CEO or the head of North America, we came in there so united that I would talk to my team about, okay, this is our Janet Jackson moment. Sometimes if you're on my team, I believe in the power of a t-shirt as a way of uniting. Maybe I get that from dance because we have our costumes. And so sometimes we would all agree on a t-shirt that we were going to all wear into the meeting so that our unity could be visible on how we showed up around the table, in addition to what you read in the plan. And at the end, as I was a president, at the end of any presentation my team did together, after the executives collected their papers and their pens, I always had my team stay in the room. We debriefed, we talked about what went well. I thought if there was any course corrections I want to make, I would offer them with some tough love, but it was not a time to berate my team. It was a time to celebrate all their work. We talked about what went well, and we always ended with one of those, put your hands in the middle, and we're going to do a group, break.
Right.
Because that's the kind of adrenaline you come out of after a really great corporate presentation. And I wanted people to have the team celebration at the end of it for all the teamwork that went into it. We were even known sometimes to have to encourage some executives, like, I know you're trying to make a phone call in this room and you haven't quite got your pencils and papers, but if you don't mind, tap, tap to my watch, my team and I just need to use the room for a second, because that final team celebration, reflection, and congratulations, I felt was an important full circle moment for that hard work.
And that was true too in the dance world. That something like at the end of a great performance, you all kind of gathered a little bit too, and that's where that might have come from.
Very true. At the beginning, here's a little secret behind the scenes. At the beginning, before a dance performance, especially true in the ballet world, people might be warming up and everything, but before you go on stage, the dancers will wish each other. We don't wish each other good luck. And maybe in Broadway, I think maybe they say break a leg. I don't know if that's really true, but in dance, you say merde, which I think is a French word that I won't translate. Somebody's got to go to Google. It's not polite, but that's what you say before you dance. And then you do the dance performance, and then the curtain closes. The curtain opens, remember when you're at the end of a performance,
Right.
the entire company comes together and is in a line, comes forward to the audience to say thank you to the audience. The audience says thank you to the company, and the company says thank you to each other. And the company always sings out the unsung behind the scenes. Remember that image of a company will point down to the orchestra and they will point up to the people in the technical booth in the back, because a performance is not flawless without the full team. And the technical people, who are not the sexy part, they're not the people in the spotlight, they are critical to the team. So there's a team celebration of a sort after a performance.
That's awesome. And by the way, Savannah, who, as you know, is the producer of this, just texted me what Merid stood for. So she did the Google work already.
You see why I'm not.
There you go. There you go. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, go to Google.
On an episode of there's the little program there called A Taste of General Mills, you talk about how, and you mentioned this earlier when you talked about presentation skills, but how dance taught you to hold your body and your shoulders with confidence, which makes the room feel differently about watching you. We've all watched body language is, such a huge piece of what people immediately zone in on. Can you tell us a story about you using that skill in a corporate setting? Like when you came into I'm going to guess you don't walk in and say "merd," now that we know, but the way you give yourself that extra boost by thinking about how your body will project.
At first, yes, in corporate America, when you are the leader of one of the businesses, at various levels, you will be asked to go in front of broad cross-functional stakeholder groups to tell them what's the strategy for the year. Why can they believe in it? And one of the most common experiences we will have is to be in front of our sales organization that might be represented all over the country. And they're the ones that have to sell all these wonderful, fun foods that we make out to all the grocery stores all around the country that you know. And once or twice a year, they will come to corporate headquarters, sit in a dark auditorium, and look at leader after leader presenting strategic plan. I've been in that audience, and I do know that as leader, they're judging what you're wearing.
Mhm.
They're judging a few other maybe unfriendly factors. So I always wanted to make sure that I gave them something to get their energy up for, because that can be sometimes in those long corporate meeting days. I mean, it can be dull city. And if you see everybody looking down on their phone, which now when you're on the stage, Don, as you and I know, you can see when people are on their phones lighting up their whole
That's
face.
the white glow of death right there. Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I pride myself on, it's okay. People have to sometimes send a text, but I want you to feel like you're in this to win this, such that I'll try, if the setting allows, to just do that optimistic bounce jog, get on stage, and then look right at the audience as if, hello, now
Right.
we are together, the two of us.
Are you ready?
Yes. To hear about the fourth quarter sales.
At some of the best bars in America.
You've never seen a granola bar this delicious.
There is no granola like our granola.
Sometimes what happens to me, though, Don, honestly, is I get swept up in my own endorphins. And sometimes I'm speaking to the audience and it's almost an out-of-body experience. I don't know if this ever happens to you. And so I usually am so rigorous in my preparation. You don't have somebody who prepares for a presentation more than I do. I always tell people I'm like a tiger pacing in a cage as I read my presentation in my hotel room before I'll present. And then I get on there, and if the audience starts nodding with me and they're in it, then I'm just come to life. Sometimes I get off the stage and I'm not quite sure if I said all the things I was supposed to say, but people tell me they like it. So then I think we'll be good in the fourth quarter.
That's all good. It's right. The fourth quarter is on, baby. Last question. You did an interview with Princeton's Alumni Society, which is, publication. And you mentioned how your ballet teacher emphasized the importance of synchronization, right? Of the ability to make sure that everybody understands their role and where it is that they fit, and that the important discussion that occurs while leading a synchronized unit. Can you tell me a story about a time when somewhere in one of your corporate roles, you thought through that idea of how will I take the collection of people sitting in front of me and make sure they're all synchronized? How do I make sure that they walk out of here, as you said, same page, same direction, same message, ready to go conquer the world?
One of the most important times in my career that I had to create synchronization, unity, and team alignment anew was when I was running the natural and organic branded portfolio for General Mills. So this is a portfolio of food brands that people really believe in and really love. Brands like Annie's, which makes awesome bunny cookies and macaroni and cheese, Cascadian Farm, wonderful organic cereals, vegetables, so many things. Muir Glen tomatoes, absolutely some of the chef's most favorite tomatoes. And then Epic Provisions, which was our newest baby to the business and is a meat snacking company with also a very planet-friendly philosophy. What was different about this portfolio from any that I'd ever run before is that this was General Mills' only portfolio where every single one of the businesses was acquired from the outside. None of them were built from within the company. General Mills is a 150-year-old company, so a lot of the brands that are famous and that you know have been around for a long time. They've had time to establish their team culture. This business was a collection of businesses that all came into the world at a different time with a different founder, beautiful visionary founders, incredibly passionate people with a real strong food philosophy. Often, as you acquire those businesses, you also bring on the existing members of the team into your team. So here I was for the first time stitching together teams that had been listening to and following the leadership of totally different founders. And sometimes the businesses had different philosophies on things like how the best way to save the planet. But I knew that one of the things we could really do is drive a big impact in food overall, in the way America uses agriculture and in the way people eat. If I could take the power of these individual rebellious spirits, not kill the spirit, but bring together what we have in common. So that was a real undertaking. One of the things I did first was to try to really continue to create opportunities for the leaders of each of those businesses to start building trust together as a leadership collective, which we call the leadership team. That included things like offsites together, like doing some of those assessments where you can learn about different styles. One of the famous ones is Myers-Briggs, where you can better come to an understanding of why people on your team are different than you. And also we'd share personal stories, things we had common, what motivated us ever since we were little. And one of the things that was so powerful was when you ask people about their own story of maybe overcoming a challenge or why they think it's so important to save the planet, therein you could hear the stories of commonality. And they could start to understand, oh, even though you're different from me, on the important stuff, we're the same.
Right.
So we did that. But another thing I really believe in, and I'm sure this comes from my theatrical background, is the notion of cultural symbols. And think about sports teams. There are so many cultural symbols that if you're at the airport and you're a Packer fan and you see another person who's a Packer fan, you know what they're wearing. I went to University of Texas, Hook 'em Horns, and I am so proud to wear my Longhorn gear when I'm walking around. And if I hear afar somebody say Hook 'em Horns, then I know already.
We're in.
We're familia practically,
Yeah.
So I think cultural symbols are important, everything from how you name your organization. And I'm really known for this. I have named my organizations very untraditional names from a corporate America point of view of what you name an operating unit or a division, because I think that the naming one can be just a fun activity everyone can do together. And it can kind of be a way of saying, oh, if you're in with us, you get it.
Right.
And it makes people bonded over something. So one of the things we did was change our name from the generic, the natural and organic portfolio to the triple bottom line operating unit, to say that one thing we all share in common is we believe in what's called a triple bottom line. We believe it's important to not only worry about profit, which is one of the bottom lines, but to also worry about people and also worry about the planet. And we will proudly name ourselves after this philosophy. It's so important to us that you can't even call our group to a meeting without repeating our philosophy.
That's awesome.
And then something fun, because some people are visual, is to have a logo that goes with it. So we had a logo, we had a team nickname. We called ourselves the Triple B because not only did we have 3 operating bottom lines, but also because the nicknames of the separate businesses before we acquired them, Annie's always called themselves the Bunnies. So that was a B. We had a team that focused on meat and positive ways to have raising livestock and how it can improve the planet if you use the right practices. We called that team the Bison because they're very oriented around livestock. And then the other business that was really around organic fruits, vegetables, we called them the pollinators. They were the bees, as in the honeybees. So we were 3 bees. See the double entendre. Our logo was a bison, a bunny, and a bee. It all comes together. So I think that there's a lot of value in creating a kind of an energy you can tap into in the tough times and in the good. I mean, the best coaches think about the Cubs. I mean, that is, the stamina and longevity of that fan base is incredible. But they are united in believing in that W.
Right. Though they don't see it often at the end of the year.
They don't see it as often as they'd like to, but they're tapped into it. And I just think that when you create unity and trust, you create yet one more resource to tap into. You don't just tap into the money assets. You don't just tap into what functional strengths people have. You got to tap in to actually the most powerful asset of a team, which is the energy and commitment any individual brings to delivering the goal.
I love it. And Carla, you've had so much success in this amazing career of yours, but you're off for one cool challenge. And I love where you're headed right now. And I'm so grateful that you're here with us, but that I get to tell
Thank you.
people about what you're out and looking to do,
Yes.
the storytelling you're there to share, and how you're going to do so. Can you share with us a little bit about what you want to attack now in this next phase?
Thank you. One of the things that I became convinced of the more I would do public speaking is that there is a whole leadership generation, a cadre of leaders sort of like waiting in the wings, ready to take their role as the head of all these businesses we love in every sector. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't just mean the general managers, it's the people leading supply chain, it's the people leading the legal team, the people leading HR and people. But there's a whole new generation that, because of the beauty of this country and the melting pot we are, looks different than the prototype of leaders that have so often been the default mindset,
The ones we color.
the ones we color on that coloring page. And
Right.
just to be specific, I think that there's a whole generation of leaders that wants more than just white male CEOs to
Mhm.
hear stories from about what it takes to get to the top.
Mhm.
As you've said, I've been very fortunate to get far up in corporate America and be able to give people some of my wisdom. But I'm trying to do two things. I want to write a book to tell my story of overcoming the hurdles that I have faced on my journey to the top of corporate America, and the strength that I hope other people who are making their own way can draw upon by thinking about some of the ways that I overcame the no's and the hurdles and the blocks and barriers that were put in my path. And I'm very excited about that. And I'm also planning to launch a podcast that will invite other leaders as well to be in dialogue with me who maybe look different and don't represent the same prototype of a corporate leader, maybe are from a unique background and difference that we haven't heard from on the traditional leadership podcasts. So I'll be launching a podcast called Your Sister in the Corner Office. And that's me. I'm your sister in the
It's
corner office. And I'll be bringing together some of my favorite corner office leaders.
I love it. And you can count on our support in any way we can give it to you. I look back at the quotes I've written down, so many of them from our conversation today. And I love this. When you create unity and trust, you tap into another resource. There's my quote for the day, and I will absolutely be holding on to it. And just grateful for you, grateful
Thank
for
you.
all that you teach and all that you're willing to give. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for you. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
Before we end the episode, I wanted to tell you what happened in the weeks after we first released this conversation. I sent the episode to the American Academy of Ballet, and that night I was sitting with my wife and kids when I received a call from an unknown number in Buffalo, New York. I answered, and on the other line, through tears, Miss Maris Battaglia told me that she listened to the podcast and it meant so much to her to listen to the impact she had been able to have on young Carla. That night, she sent me this email, and I wanted to read it to you. Actually, she says in the title of it that she'd spent all night writing it, so that's pretty cool. But it says, "Dear Mr. Yeager, I'm so sorry that I interrupted your dinner last night. Family time is more important now than ever. I can't even begin to tell you how deeply your wonderful email affected me. And thank you for taking the time to find American Academy's info. I literally had tears streaming down my face as I read it. A few months ago, my husband and I were watching a special program on General Mills. I looked up and this beautiful black woman on the screen, and I said to Richard, I know that face. That's Carla. Her name came up on the screen, and I was beside myself. I tried to find a contact number the next morning online. I couldn't. As she puts in parentheses, I'm old and not real computer savvy. Carla and her whole family had become a very special part of my life. We were close, and she was so talented and so smart, and I loved her to pieces. Last night, I listened to your podcast, and I cried some more. So, dear man, because of you, I couldn't sleep last night. Memories flooded me. Thank you for your amazing reach out. please, please let me know how I can get in touch with dear Carla. I'm going to play her podcast again tonight and the next night and the night after that. Thank you again. Stay safe. Fondly, Miss Maris. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.